Man's over here talking about Kezu's balls. On one of my previous videos speculating about potential expansions for Monster Hunter Wilds, I mentioned I didn't know much of anything about Frontier. And one of you guys, editor me slapped the comment up here, suggested I check out SuperRAD series on the story and history of Monster Hunter Frontier. So, that's what we're going to be doing here. Now, if I didn't say this for the TF2 React, but because I know TF2 and Valve is cool with it and all, but if you got a problem with me doing a React to you, just let me know. I'll take it down. Just figured I should put that disclaimer up there in the front. And with that out of the way, let's learn about the history of Monster Hunter Frontier, Part 1.
Hey, thanks so much for clicking on the video. I am going to be going over Monster Hunter Frontier today. In
That's
all
what
of
I'm
my
here
other
for.
history videos, I have done all of the footage recording myself, but that was pretty difficult or almost impossible to do for Frontier. Luckily, I met people that have the resources to get me the footage I need, but because of the limitations of that, there's going to be less dedicated footage of certain things that I'm talking about. I try to use screenshots that are available online for some of.
I mean, as long as I can have at least some visual reference for what you're talking about, that's fine. I need to know what I'm looking at because I have no idea, but as long as I have some sort of reference, should be good.
This content, but it's not possible for all of them, and I apologize for that. So when watching these videos, you'll generally see me hunting a monster and talking about something completely different, but again, I try to show some of that footage when I can. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to talk about.
I mean, as long as I
video
see
is
the
still very
monsters at least a little
informative,
bit.
and hopefully you have a great time with it. And again, if I got anything wrong, let me know. Monster Hunter Frontier is notorious within the Monster Hunter community due to a lot of players that have not gotten to experience it calling it not a real Monster Hunter game, which makes some sense as it's a spin-off MMORPG designed for the Xbox 360 and Microsoft Windows service. Two consoles that never saw releases for the series by this point in time. I can think back to discussions on the game with other Monster Hunter fanatics and a lot of disdain surrounding some of the mechanics, but mostly the monster designs and their power levels as they get progressively more flamboyant and intricate in comparison to the grounded designs found within the mainline series. But
that is part of one of the main things that did turn me off of Frontier when I first heard about it. And I mentioned that when I was talking about the two from Frontier suggestions you guys had previously. What little I do know of Frontier is, well, that it gets absurd once you get past the first little bit of it. But they did prove they know how to tone it down a little bit and rework it with Espinoss, so maybe I'll find a Frontier monster here that I really like and would like to see come to mainline. I don't know.
maybe Frontier wasn't that bad. In fact, maybe through its development and updates and releases, it's actually an incredibly good, albeit difficult Monster Hunter experience. Maybe some of these monster designs and mechanics are incredibly unique. Maybe some of these monsters would even make it over to the
I have no doubt that the designs and monsters are unique and interesting. I'm just concerned on if they feel Monster Hunter, you know? Because again, that was my one issue with thinking about getting into Frontier when I had the slim opportunity to do so and passed on it. If it's Monster Hunter, right? Monster Hunter is in a very weird place to me where it is very clearly fantasy, but it is. It's gonna feel weird to say this a little bit, but a grounded fantasy somewhat. Not in the sense that not obviously fantastical things happen, but it's a grounded fantasy in the sense that every single thing makes sense, right? Nothing in the world feels, oh, it's a monster because magic. It all, like, every single monster, even elder dragons, have at least some level of visible physiological explanation for how they do the thing. Even things like Amatsu, little bit of a loosey-goose example there, because Amatsu is one of the more how do you work of the elder dragons, but it is an elder dragon, the one class of monster that is allowed to break the rules somewhat. But even then, it controls the element and it glides using its sails and stuff and using wind from that. There's a reason. It's a weird fantasy reason, but it's a reason that feels real in the universe. And what little I've seen of Frontier so far, not from this, but just in general, some of it doesn't seem to have, a lot of it actually, doesn't seem to have that this could be a real creature in this universe, not something that just exists because of magic. Not that there's anything wrong necessarily with, magic monster that exists because magic monster fantasy setting. That works in settings where that's what it is, but that's not Monster Hunter, at least not to me. Yes, there's bioenergy and all of that, but again, it's more grounded to, the extent that mountain-sized dragons are grounded, but you get what I mean.
The mainline series. Oh wait, that actually happened with Hypnocatrice and Lavasioth. This series.
Wait, those were in Freedom Unite. Is Frontier older than second gen? Because Freedom Unite's second gen, right? Is Frontier that old? I didn't realize Frontier was that old. I thought Frontier took Lavasioth and Hypnocatrice from second gen, but they came from Frontier to Freedom? Huh.
Series of videos is coming from someone who never really got to play Frontier when it was alive. Yes, was alive, because as of writing this, the servers have been shut down and there's currently no real way to play Frontier.
Well, I don't know if this is current, but I was told at least a couple of years ago that, well, there's no official way to play Frontier. If you're willing to hoist a flag and sail some seas, you might be able to still. But I have no idea of the true validity of that.
Legitimately, though there are people working on that. Together,
you and
I are going to look at the development of Monster Hunter Frontier, from its initial inception to release to the updates and expansions created for it. We'll dive into features offered in the series and try to compare gameplay to gameplay of mainline titles. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how intricate and interesting this game's combat was. Think old school Monster Hunter on crack. It's pretty wild, and I'm excited to show it to you. This first part in the history series will be focusing on the initial release of Monster Hunter Frontier and a lot of its major updates from Season 1 to 5. Future videos.
Okay. I'm pausing here for just a second. I am going to slide me over to right here, and apparently I need to hide my VC Face interface because I thought I already did that. Whoops. But for some reason, VC Face wants to make me look this way when I'm just looking straight on today, so I'm putting me over here.
Will focus on the final season updates from 6 to 10, the Forward 1 to Forward 5 updates, the G1 to G10 updates, and finally the Z/Zenith releases. If you haven't watched my previous videos,
so Zenith, now I'm gonna have me over here so I can pause easier. Okay, so, and okay, now you're tracking me correctly. Why are you being difficult, VC Face? Anyway, I've seen a few pictures of Zenith monsters, and I know that that's when things get really ridiculous.
On the history of the series, I suggest you do so now. Additionally, if you enjoy these videos and want to help support the channel, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It just takes a couple of seconds.
I'll give you a like. You haven't earned a subscribe yet. Convince me that Frontier is cool.
The video to Monster Hunter fans everywhere. I'm SuperRAD, and today I'm here to bring you a
Monster Hunter fan right here,
Monster Hunter Frontier.
Tell me of it. I mean, you already told me something I didn't know with the Hypnocatrice Lavasioth.
A quick note before we get started. These videos will be going in depth about the history, development, and mechanics of Frontier specifically, as well as showcasing the monsters that were released throughout its lifetime.
Whatever you're supposed
this
to pronounce
is
them.
Not an opinion piece about the difference in monster designs.
Hold up. Huh. What? I feel like vents that launch you up was a thing in some of the Monster Hunters I've played. I just don't remember where.
Compared to mainline games, and shouldn't be taken as such. Rather, use these videos as a way of understanding what Frontier was like and to have something to point to if anyone ever asks you about it.
Again, that's why I'm here.
Additionally, I won't be going deep into Mesoporta Square until the end of the series, as it will be better to look at the hub as a whole with all the changes implemented. Okay, so actual development history is hard to come by for this series. Originally, Frontier Season 1.0 was released for Microsoft Windows in Japan in 2007, and a Korean release in 2008. It'd be 3 years later in 2010 that the game would be ported over to the Xbox 360. By the time of the 360 release, it would have already been updated to Season 8.5. There was even a release in Taiwan, though this was translated by a third party. The actual Japanese version generally remained around 9 months ahead of the Taiwanese version, give or take in terms of content. It wasn't.
I actually kind of like this monster he's got on for background footage. It looks like if you cross Plesioth with Tigrex, that's kind of neat looking,
for
and
Western
hasn't done
players to
anything
get their
too
hands
crazy
on the
yet.
game and give it a shot, but it could prove to be rather difficult. Take the Korean release for example. For whatever reason, the Korean game requires players to provide their valid social security numbers, which would be compared to a government.
What? Okay, and I thought current censorship issues were getting out of hand. It is Korea, but you have to give your social security number to play it.
Database. This meant Western players had to get their hands on a real Korean social security number and essentially commit identity fraud in order to play. Luckily,
why would you do that? Why would you do that? That might be why I never played Frontier, actually. I might have heard something of that, and that scared me from ever trying to play it. I don't know. It was... But that is absurd.
The Japanese version only required a VPN, but back in 2007, those were still a bit more difficult to come by, unlike today where you can use something like NordVPN. No, I'm not sponsored by them.
Okay, good. I was going to have to skip it.
The game used built-in IP blockers to prevent players from outside of their respective country releases to be able to play without the use of one of these VPNs. One of the benefits of playing on the Korean server with a social security number was that the Korean release didn't require a monthly fee. When initially released, you could consider Monster Hunter Frontier to basically just be a re-release of Monster Hunter DOS. Players even started in the online hub town of Dundorma from DOS's release. This would later change to Mesoporta Square, which would be the main hub for the rest of future releases and would be updated throughout. The game seems to have had its first closed beta near the release of Monster Hunter Portable 2nd, and was meant to have an open beta release June 21st, 2007, but this was unfortunately postponed to June 28th, as a technical test was required. One major feature to notice during these beta and tests was how wards and worlds worked. Players new to the game and just starting out could join servers for players that were HR 15 or lower, generally known as tutorial wards. Other players would be able to go to wards that allowed access to players HR 30 or lower. This allowed players to focus on playing with people closer to their skill level if they wished.
That makes sense.
July 5th, 2007 that the initial release of Season 1.0 was finally available. Let's take a look at some of the key features and monster additions from Season 1 to Season 1.5.
Okay. That's what I'm most interested in, the monsters. That and the world in general, but mostly the monsters.
The main features introduced in Season 1.0 were 2 new monsters and a new area to hunt within. First up, we have Hypnocatrice.
I haven't hunted Frontier. Hypnocatrice, never played Frontier. I've said that a couple times already. But I hunted Freedom Unite Hypnocatrice a lot. I think I was like going after one of the armor set pieces from it and couldn't get the one feather I needed, but I just really liked Freedom Unite Hypnocatrice. And that is one monster that apparently is a Frontier monster that I would really like to see come back now that I've actually been reminded of Hypnocatrice, because, well, it's a really fun, flying wyvern. It's not one you think of until you're reminded of it, at least for me. But when you're reminded of it, it's fondly.
Watched my history video on the 2nd generation of Monster Hunter, you may remember that 2 monsters originally introduced in Frontier made it over to the mainline portable series. One of these was Hypnocatrice, who only ever appeared outside of Frontier in one game, that being Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. It's a large bird wyvern that has the ability to knock players
I keep looking the wrong way. Why do I keep looking?
Sleep sack.
Why is VC Face keeping me looking the wrong way? Can you stop doing that, please? Can I be looking the right way? Thank you.
and can deliver powerful kicks with its strong legs. Lavasioth was the second new addition to Monster Hunter and also made it over to mainline games through its initial appearance in Freedom Unite. Unlike Hypnocatrice, it managed to appear in future mainline releases in the series, but none of its subspecies or other frontier specific.
Lavasioth has subspecies? Lavasioth has subspecies. Really? Lava mudfit. The lava fish has okay. So unlike Hypnocatrice, I hate Lavasioth. Not even because Piscean Wyvern has that, but Lavasioth, he's just boring. Even more so than Juratotus, honestly. And that's saying a lot. But Lavasioth, to me, has always just been worse Acnactor. And so when I got to him in Freedom Unite, I had already played a good chunk of Tri, up to Acnactor, I'm pretty sure, so he was a letdown for sure.
As of yet, it's a Piscean Wyvern
later
that can
generation
live and
going
swim
back
through lava, using the magma as armor around its body as it hardens. Hypnocatrice was available
Lavasioth
day
swam,
one with the
so
release of
Acnactor
Frontier Season 1.0, but
know.
Lavasioth wouldn't be accessible until August 8th. This would be the general release plan for all major and minor updates. Release these updates with all of the new monsters and content, but only make new monsters and content accessible every month or so in order to boost the playtime and longevity of the series. You see this in a lot of other MMOs as well to keep the people subscribed. The other big addition was the inclusion of the Great Forest area. This area also made it over to Freedom Unite and acts as a tropical rainforest setting the player will hunt monsters like Hypnocatrice in.
I remember this.
To make note
what do you mean? Wait, Great Forest? Great Forest.
Throughout Season 1.0's lifespan are the rollbacks required due to the inclusion of End Protect Game Guard. The anti-cheat software
he just
has
has
to
Great
prevent
Forest
players
and
from hacking the game.
Okay.
Apparently, there was some issues with its inclusion that caused some sort of crash.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've played Freedom Unite because I am terrified to turn my PSP on again because every time I do, it screams like it's demonically possessed. So, forgive me if I misremember a few things.
Back around August 17th, 2007. Following this, there was also a large series of bans in September that were apparently accused of being false and unjust. Also due to the poor implementation of End Protect Game Guard, which is notorious for being an awful anti-cheat software. I don't have many more details on these events as they were so long ago.
We all know awful moderation sucks.
But it wouldn't be the first time we've seen a game with a wave of bans that were not deserved. Along with all these new additions were monsters and areas previously seen in DOS. With the release of the 1.5 update on September 5th came other second generation monsters like Yangaruga and Tigrex. Although Scarred Yangaruga is first gen. Along with the inclusion of returning monsters was
Scarred Yangaruga is first gen. I knew he was at least second gen because again Freedom Unite, but didn't know Yangaruga goes all the way back to first gen though.
Upgrade to Hunter rank. Originally, Hunter rank could only go up to 50, but now could reach the 51 to 99 range. One thing to note is that the Seasons mechanic from DOS was also implemented by this point in the series. I won't go into detail about how it works, but if you want to know more, check out part 2 of my mainline history series, which goes over all of it. One of the aspects of this mechanic is breeding season, and on December 5th, 2 new monster additions were added, those being breeding season Hypnocatrice and the Red Lavasioth subspecies. Breeding season Hypnocatrice is very similar to
I have hunted him,
but is considered a variant, a male Hypnocatrice that changes its color to a more vibrant pink hue during the mating season.
Which is, again, back here what I was talking just a minute ago about Monster Hunter feeling real, which is one of my favorite things about the franchise. It feels real in a way a lot of other things don't, fictional things don't. And stuff like this. The reason why we have stronger, her different colored Hypnocatrice is because it's in rut. Same with Black Gravios, and I think White Monoblos, but actually I think White Monoblos might just be albinism, but little things like that to explain why we have the subspecies and variants is so cool to me.
faster than your typical Hypnocatrice and more resistant to damage. Red
Typical
Lavassioth is a
subspecies?
subspecies. True to its name, it's almost completely red on the top portion of its body and is stronger and faster compared to your typical Lavassioth.
I mean,
It
that
also
makes
has the ability to
sense
shoot
for
a trio of magma balls at
older gen
hunters.
Lavassioth
One final thing I won't go into
subspecies,
too much
but-
detail about are gallery decorations, which were best in slot armor skill decorations players unlocked through designing a custom room within the game. Through customizing
You had custom rooms all the way back then? Okay. That's pretty cool.
this room space, players would be gifted some of the best decorations in the game, as well as farming upgrades through loyalty stamps players received through the creation and purchase of furniture. With these major additions out of the way, we can move on to the next major update, Season 2.0.
Okay, so this is where Espionage comes
Season
from.
2 of Frontier was released January 30th, 2008, and really started to carve its own path in design and mechanics. In an interview, one of the developers stated, "I wonder if the original concept of Monster Hunter Frontier finally started in 2.0. Some of the biggest additions included were the implementation of Hunter Rank 100 to 199, as well as a new flying wyvern known as Espinus, and multiple quality of life
What is that pronunciation? What is that pronunciation? Espinus? Really? Espionage.
features that I won't be going into too much detail about.
It's like, okay, actually, you know what? What are your later proven right or wrong headcanon pronunciations for some Monster Hunters? Because some monsters in Monster Hunter. Because when we found the official pronunciations of a couple of them, there are a couple of them I do not agree with. I don't know if Espinus is the supposedly correct one, but it's Tigrex, not Tigrex. It's Lagiacrus, not Lagiacrus. You know? And I think there's like two others I've heard of. Oh, Alatreon, not Alatreon. Yes. I refuse the official pronunciation to those three at the very least.
Espinus is similar in design to Rathian, being able to both breathe fire and expose the player to the poison ailment. It can also paralyze hunters as well. Its body is covered in large pink spikes where it's
Also, yeah, Espionage, I think, might have been the start of Frontier's obsession with slapping spikes on everything, but it works for Espionage. But I don't know how well it works for upcoming
poison
ones. I've seen
resides.
pictures
When
of.
enraged, its veins will glow and be visible, similar to a Tigrex. Its fire
Again, I mentioned this previously. I love it when actually I didn't mention this in the previous you've seen. I originally tried to record a hunt of one of the two Frontier monsters you guys suggested, but the audio got borked for some reason. Anyway, I love it when monsters, when they enrage, there is like a visual distinction of them turning red, of their exhaust smoke turning black, of Monoblos getting the red frill crests and darkening.
have the ability to
design
cause
thing that I
both
like.
poison and paralysis at the same time, making them incredibly dangerous.
And,
It's typically
that's
fairly
gotta be
passive,
annoying.
but once enraged becomes incredibly aggressive and uses all of its abilities against hunters. Another big addition was the inclusion of SP weapons, armor, and decorations. SP weapons were low rarity weapons that were required for specific special quests that would unlock access to other quests through their completion.
That's interesting. That almost sounds like an arena quest, but not. You need to use this specific weapon to do the quest again. Huh. That could actually be really interesting to see come back.
SP armor players could unlock was special in that they had no armor skills and only decoration slots. To make up for this, SP decorations, which could only be used on SP armor, were ridiculously strong. One could even offer plus 20 to expert. It can be noted that the addition of the variants and related new elements really marked a line in the sand for a lot of people about the direction that the series was going, and a lot of traditional Monster Hunter players began to drop the series at this point due to the new features and various balancing issues. The unique mechanic of weapon length was also introduced. Weapons could now vary in length between 5 basic sizes from very short to very long. These lengths would affect the hitboxes of the weapons, and generally the longer the weapon, the more usable it was. With some
That is an interesting mechanic, but I don't know if I like that. Half of me thinks that sounds really cool, and half of me thinks that sounds absolutely horrible. If any of you guys are Frontier players who've dealt with that, let me know what you think about that mechanic, because I don't know.
Incredible
Also, those
short
are some
weapons not
long
being
dual
usable
blades.
at all. Generally, long length was the
Those are some obscenely long dual blades.
most ideal. The 2.5 update
That's like a great sword length dual blade
was released April
almost.
23rd and brought with it a new Espina
That's a little
subspecies,
ridiculous. Also,
featuring warmer
Espina's
reds
being
and
really-
yellows around its body in comparison to the cooler greens and pinks. On top of producing larger fireballs, this subspecies was also able to launch them from its feet and create gigantic explosions.
Why? See, here's where I'm getting into Frontier, starting to feel less Monster Hunter-y. Why can it shoot fires from its feet? Is there a reason? If you can give me a good reason why it has fire feet, I'll accept it. It's like Rathalos. I don't need to question why Rathalos' claws can poison you. It's the male Rathian. Rathian has tail poison. It has claw poison. Makes sense. Fire feet don't make sense unless you actually, like, they're not intuitively understandable. Why does it have fire feet unless its feet do something that produces fire? I mean, they obviously have to, but what is the mechanism here?
Top of this, instead of paralysis, it could now inflict the defense down ailment to really deal
I
damage
hate
to
defense
hunters.
down.
2.5 also raised the HR,
But I hate it in a good way. You know, I hate it when I get it, but it's an interesting status effect. And honestly, I wish a lot of the older status effects would come back. Like, I miss the snowman the biggest ones being the snowman and mudman status, because they were so funny and incredibly annoying if you're actually caught by it. But you can also appreciate the humor of just being stuck in a giant snowball.
cap all the way up to 999, with players unlocking almost all available content around HR 100. It seems like the Hunter Festival was also introduced with this update and was an event that lasted through the game's entire lifespan. The festival was a multi-week event where every guild within the server would get assigned to either a red team or a blue team. It's a rather intricate competition, so I won't go into too much detail about it here, but teams would compete to collect more souls through hunting monsters and other various means, and by
And again, here we're going into the more fantasy than monster. What? Why are we collecting souls? That's not Monster Hunter. If you were to say, like, collect special monster part that's just for the thing, sure, but why are you calling it souls? Also, the idea of having randomly assigned red and blue teams to do a competing thing, kind of interesting, but also feels like you could produce a lot of toxicity.
meeting certain thresholds would be offered rewards. The winning team would get access to special quests for a week after the competition. Points could be earned and spent at a specific festival location attendant, which was incredibly useful for collecting rare G-rank monster parts. Some of the parts were only a 2% to 5% carve chance, so it was extremely useful. The point system specifically wasn't introduced until 3.0, however. Let's take a look at Season 3 now.
Okay. Gonna introduce some new ones that I think are cool.
Season 3 released July 2nd, 2008 and marked the 1-year anniversary of Frontier and included multiple new monsters, gameplay additions, and gameplay improvements. Felines had multiple updates and player customization was improved with multiple new hairstyles. The players also...
What is your favorite hairstyle? Especially for old gen Monster Hunter. Because in older gen games, I was always partial to the Wrath Layer set. Or, not set, Wrath Layer hairstyle. What about you guys?
obtained more customization options for their player homes, and armor color customization was finally introduced. It also brought with it a new hunting area known as Great Forest Peak, an arena area at the top of the giant tree within the Great Forest that was...
Oh, that is cool. You know what? I always felt like you could get up there, so the fact you actually can in Frontier makes sense.
Mostly home to the new Hypnocatrice edition by this point in the series. Speaking of that, 3.0 brought with it 2 new monster additions, one of these being Silver Hypnocatrice, a rare subspecies of Hypnocatrice, which is much more powerful than its typical counterpart.
Yeah, rare species
it has better
typically
control over its sleep sac, more powerful kicks, and can cause tremors when it lands on the ground.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense for a monster, especially a rare species Hypnocatrice. Way more powerful sleep, stronger kicks. Hypnocatrice is known for already having real strong kicks. That one makes sense.
Along with the new rare subspecies called
Oh!
Akura Vashimo, a brand new
Oh, I like you.
carapacean monster similar to a scorpion
Carapace?
with large crystals
That's a
growing around its
Neopteran.
body. On top of paralysis, it can also inflict a new ailment called crystallization.
I don't know if Neopteran... No, Neopterans were a thing by then. Why would you not call that a Neopteran? It's a scorpion monster. Or, even more accurate, a Timnoceran. Though those were probably later. If that guy comes back, they better reclassify him, because that's not a crab. That's a bug. Also, what were you saying about crystallization?
Where the player will be covered in crystals that must be shaken off. Their max stamina will be lowered to the lowest level possible, and if they don't shake them off in time, they'll explode.
Okay, so I was about to say it's like the Mudman Snowman thing, but you also... So it's like a combination of the Mud Ball and Blast Blight? Interesting. Interesting. I need to reset my position again because VC Face is fighting me today. Okay.
Mechanic I haven't mentioned yet is friendship skills, where players with similar name icons based on armor colors would get specific buffs when in a quest together. This
What? Okay, that is interesting. That is an interesting idea. That opens up all kinds of like team synergy potentialities, depending on how strong that is, if it's worth building around. That one could be an that's an interesting mechanic. It might be neat to see that return.
was quickly made obsolete, however. Additionally, servers that required players to have a maximum rank, known as expert districts, were also abolished. This season was also when service started in Korea, although it
Okay, but I do really like this monster, though.
only lasted there for 3 years. Season 3.5 released September 3rd, 2008, and brought with it a new monster as well as the inclusion of the Versus Quests mechanic in dailies. Akura Jebbia was a new carapacean similar to Akura Vishimu, but not a subspecies. Think Hermitar and Shianatar from the mainline game.
What? Shianatar? Hermitar, yes. I usually call him Helmitar, but Hermitar, acceptable. Cianatar. Cenotar. I called him Cenotar. Shogun Cenotar. Cianotar. It's weird seeing other people's headcanon pronunciations before we get official ones.
It is white and blue in color in comparison to the
I
purple
like
of
this one
Vishimu,
too.
and can also inflict the crystallization status ailment. It's strong.
The spiky bits work for bugs and crabs and those kind of things, because hard shell spiking, it makes sense. When you're just slapping spikes randomly on monsters that doesn't really fit with, spiky, edgy, cool aesthetics work if it makes sense. This makes sense to me. Some of the other ones I've seen don't.
Stronger and faster in comparison to Vishimu, and can throw its crystals as explosive projectiles.
Okay, that's
Versus
cool.
Quest functioned as a competitive race to hunt a monster the fastest. Within this mode, 2 groups of 2 would enter a single map together. However, each team's map would be instanced. Basically, the teams could see where the opponents were on the map, but not interact with them or their monsters.
That almost sounds like what Wild is doing with the timed special arena quests, but a refined version. Huh. That's kind of interesting. And it brings up a thought I've seen some other people share about Wilds, or similar to Wilds game, where it'd be really cool if you had multiple hunter teams out on the same map that could see and interact with each other, but they were hunting different targets. And I do think that would be really cool.
Goal seems to have been to hunt the target monster before the other team manages to do so, and players could use items on opposing teams for various negative effects.
Oh, that is salty. I don't like that. If you're doing a team talent race thing to hunt the monster, it should be a test of skill, not of who can mess with the other team the most. That is mean. What do we got now?
We're moving on to 4.0 now, and I just want to point out that all of these designs for monsters so far, I could fully expect to see in any mainline Monster Hunter title. I think
Yes! Yeah. All of the ones previously I could see coming back because they fit the design.
the series gets a lot of flack for its monster designs and gameplay, but realistically, there's a good portion of the game by this point that any mainline hunter would enjoy.
Yeah. Like I said, the only thing I had mild issue with is espionage subspecies having fire feet, but if they gave a reason for that, which they probably did, I'm fine with it. So far, everything's made sense. I feel like this is when we get to the crazy doesn't make sense for Monster Hunter monsters.
4.0 was released December 17th, 2008. For a good amount of content up to this point, well-known video game producer Yoshinori Ono had been working on the series. Ono is best known for his work as producer and executive producer on many of the Street Fighter games, and was even the producer on the cancelled Deep Down title from Capcom. Ono stepped down during 4.0 and was replaced by
I'm not a huge... I've played like 2 Street Fighter games, one of the old classic arcade ones. I think it was Street Fighter 2, but the PSP port for it. And then I don't know if it was the newest Street Fighter or the second newest one. I've sometimes played that with my cousin, but I don't most of the time because he is stupidly good with Dhalsim to the point where you can't do anything.
Nori Sugiura, who has worked as a producer on many Pokemon titles including Mystery Dungeon, Masters, and Shuffle. First bit of new content to note is a new hunting area called the Gorge, which changed from a sunny day to rain and thunderstorms at night. The area features...
That's neat. And also, that's something I do, again, that's something I like from older Monster Hunter games where they kind of brought it back, did it in Wilds, better in Wilds with the inclemency and stuff, system and all that. But in older gen games, there would be a different environmental weather from day to night for some places. The best example I can think of off the top of my head is the jungle map, which is one of the... There was like an island peninsula off of one of the... I think it was Area 10, that's the island, where you couldn't get there if it was night because the water and tide would be rising, partly because of the rain, and it would cover the sandbar that led to the island, and I always thought that was really cool. Same with the desert maps, having a like basin area that during the day you could go down into, but at night it would be filled up with water.
2 specific types of cacti, which when consumed can offer defense and attack boosts to the player.
Which actually brings up a thought I had a while back for that hypothetical beach map I talked about in my spec videos of, what if the inclemency for this beach map was like a high-low tide the inclemency fallow was a high-low tide thing where at one point areas would flood and be filled with water, so you'd have to do underwater combat, but in other times they'd recede into these like brine tide pool areas. I think that'd be cool.
It was also one of the first areas to have destructible environments that the player may need to get through to access the rest of the map, such as long tough grass that could only be destroyed through slashing weapons like longsword. The next...
Kind of reminds me of the boulders that would block off the map in certain quests in Freedom Unite, or try to.
Big addition was the inclusion of a new thunder element wyvern known as Beru Kirurosu, a large flying wyvern with a single horn on the top of its head and long tendrils on each of its wings. It has many electrical attacks.
Okay. Here's where we get to the designs I don't like. I like the fur on the flying wyvern. That part's cool, but this horn right here, that works. But what is with all of these random tubes? These random tubular spikes, that... I don't like that.
But the most notable is the lightning beam it shoots.
It works on the tail, though.
It has quest-specific behaviors, so it does not always act the same.
Also the wing chains.
And when enraged...
I do like the wing chains. That is not something I have an issue with too much, but the random spikes everywhere I kind of do.
Perform a dive bomb maneuver which creates a large explosion around the surrounding area. By this point, Beru Kirurosu lives specifically within the new gorge area. Something to note as well is that previous monsters from mainline inclusions of the series were still being implemented within these updates. Not only that, but these monsters may even get reworked moves or new moves altogether. For example...
Okay, so nothing about Kirurosu, I think it's calling its attacks so far that I've seen on this are that crazy. It's just the design. the design of its back in specific that I don't like. If you got rid of the spines on the back or toned them down, I could see him coming back.
Teostra was made more difficult by giving its fire breath a longer
Teostra. Teostra. Teostra is how I always call them.
range and wider
Teostra.
explosion area. Poogie also
Teostra.
marked its inclusion as
Something
a
like that.
support character by this point in the updates, but having it depart with you was dependent on a spawn rate. The Poogie could often get
Hold up, let me. What do you say?
shoots similar to that of a Rajang. It has quest-specific behaviors, so it does not always act the same when hunted, and when enraged can perform a dive
that's
bomb
kinda
maneuver,
neat.
which creates a large explosion around the surrounding area.
What was he
By
saying
this
about a
point,
follower?
Beirukirosu lives specifically within the New Gorge area. Something to note as well is that previous monsters from mainline inclusions of the series were still being implemented within these updates. Not only that, but these monsters may even get reworked moves or new moves altogether. For example, Teostra was made more difficult by giving its fire breath a longer range and wider explosion area. Poogie
That makes sense for Teostra because it's the Fire Elder Dragon. No issues there. Something about Poogie?
He also marked its inclusion as a support character by this point in the updates, but having it depart with you was dependent on a spawn rate. The Poogie could often get sick and refuse to go on quests, but there was ways to cure this. Similar
Why would you take Poogie out on quests with you? Why would you do that? You're supposed to pet him and get his blessing before you go out on hunts, but you don't need to take him with you. What are you, a monster?
to Palicos, Poogies
Hunter?
could come out on missions and even be able to get extra monster cards out of hunts for you. Poogie even had its own skills to boost its effects when out in the field with you. Poogie could even
Why would you
consume
take Poogie
potions
with you?
instantly for hunters to heal them when they were in a pinch. It seems
would
that
you
at this
do-
point
No,
a time-based
that's-
free-to-play mechanic was added, maybe a
I don't
trial
like
period
that.
of some sort, but it seems more like it was a severely limited free mode that locked players out of most of the content. The
Oh, that's either make it paid to play, either make it paid or don't need or free, and just have like in-game purchase stuff, or right. Don't make like a cruddy free version and then the paid version.
development team was also getting a lot of backlash from fans due to the broken promise of items never being purchasable. What those items are, I'm not
What?
sure, but adding a real currency shop left a bad taste in players' mouths. A lot of
Ooh, that depends. So, especially if the free-to-play version has nothing. If you're paying for the game just to play it fully, a real money item shop, I do not agree with. But if it is a fully free-to-play game, then the real money item shop to give you easier access to things you can still get in-game is fine to me, so long as it's stuff you could get in-game without having to physically pay for it. You know?
players at the time considered this a turning point for the series and was thought to cause a second wave of players dropping the game altogether.
It does not
Despite
surprise me
this,
that
it was
people would
revealed
drop
that
it
there
for
was
that.
actually an increase to player population at this time, most likely not
Huh.
from traditional mainline fans, but other players starting to see interest in the absurd power scaling. Season 5 was released on April 9th, 2009 and brought with it the removal of Dundorma and a renovation to Mesoporta Square, further solidifying that Frontier was moving away from aspects of the old games.
On one hand, it's good that the actual hub gets renovated, but why would you get rid of Dundorma if you have Dundorma? Heck, make Dundorma the new player hub, and then grant people access to Mesopota or whatever as they get better and move further into the frontier. You know?
Is a brand new water element flying wyvern introduced.
Okay, so
in
this is when
update.
we get this guy.
Surprisingly, it is not considered a Piscean wyvern or a leviathan despite its fish-like appearance.
Well, it's not a Leviathan because it's not a Leviathan. It doesn't have the shape. It's a flying wyvern because it has that pseudo-wyvern, flying wyvern bone structure, and is probably genetically descendant from other of that line. Just because it's aquatic doesn't mean it's not a flying wyvern.
It's considered a glutton and will eat most food around it. After eating too much, it can regurgitate the food, which can then sometimes be gathered through by hunters for additional rewards. Hunters can
That's
actually
kind of
gauge
cool.
what type of food it wants to eat based on the color of its drool, and if constantly fed effectively, it will become overly full and be forced to ignore hunters and digest.
That is an interesting mechanic for a monster. I like that, actually. And that plays into you being a skilled hunter, not just in fighting the monster, but preparing for the monster itself, and otherwise better, you know, words not wording in my brain place. I like that mechanic.
Hunters can interrupt this by attacking or flinching the enemy, causing it to use the food within it as a weapon. Season 5.5 released June 17th, 2009 and marked the second anniversary of the Frontier series. It not only brought a new rare species, but the intricate Rasta system. The Rasta system was a way for hunters to bring along AI companions into hunts instead of requiring additional real player
Support hunters that
Rastas
early.
were available after HR 11, and by taking them with you on hunts, players would earn points which would allow them to buy better equipment for the Rastas. Players can set up their own Rastas, but have the ability to contract other players as well. How the Rastas function and act within a hunt is dependent on the hunters you are contracting from. The white Espinus rare species was finally introduced in
I like that. I always like support hunter. Like, support hunters and the idea of support hunters like the Rasta system was something I had been wanting well until we actually got it in Wilds. Primarily because I have hunted alone since the very beginning, mostly because I've never had anything set up to do online play. But it was really cool to have support hunters in Wild, so having that all the way back in Frontier, kind of neat.
A hunt is dependent on the hunters you are contracting from.
It seems like it was fairly in-depth
species was finally introduced into the series with this release as well.
Oh, I like that color scheme.
The ability to inflict poison, paralysis, and defense down ailments on top of its typical fire abilities. It has
so far so good, because White Espinos, interesting.
Better accuracy with these moves as well. It has a super ability where it flies into the air and unleashes a huge poison fireball.
Okay, how crazy is this though?
Players then need to trip the Espinus, otherwise the areas it stomps on will be left with a fiery poison area of effect, making
that's not too crazy.
Hunter mobility more difficult. While the previous two Espinus have been rather passive until enraged, this rare species will be enraged as soon as it wakes up.
I like that. I like this version of Espinos. That's still within the bounds of what I consider not crazy Frontier shenanigans, and I like the color scheme a lot.
Another inclusion to Season 5 are Hunter Gems or Hunter Pearls. Basically, hunters would have colors assigned to them, and each day, a monster type would be assigned to a specific color. Let's say that Elder Dragons were assigned to green. By hunting Elder Dragons, you would raise the points in that specific color. If you were assigned the green color, you could get bonus points as well. By raising the cap of all colors, you would be able to move on to the next rank of your Pearl, and there were 9 ranks in total. The level
what does
of
that
your
get you,
Pearl
though?
would correlate with the amount of extra bonus skills you could equip, such as not flinching when initially sighted by a monster, or no stamina reduction when climbing. This was done through the new caravan site area, which included the required quests, known as caravan quests. Players would have to be at least HR 17 to participate. Capping the color to rank up the gem isn't the only requirement, however. Players must earn caravan points and spend them to properly rank their gem up.
I don't know how I feel about that one. That mechanic that has potential, but it can feels like it could be really, really grindy in an unfun way. I don't know.
If it hasn't been obvious by this point, Monster Hunter Frontier offered an incredible amount of content almost every month, and while the monsters started to get more intricate in both their design and abilities, the abilities of hunters did the same, from new decorations, new armors, new weapons, and abilities. Weapon length specifically is something I could definitely see in a mainline series, and
that kind of. They would have to majorly rework it, but that weapon length mechanic is actually really interesting. And they could actually go a step further with the weapon length thing and do blunt or sharp and change the blunt or sharp divide to be reflective of the weapon's design. Because, there are some hammers that are sharp. They're axes. There's some great swords that are clubs. And there's some dual swords and sword and shields that are clubs too. If you were to implement the weapon length thing, I think it would be cool to combine that with also having the hammered swords do blunt damage and the axe hammers do bladed, slashing damage. That would be an interesting thing to do.
Same can be said about the Rasta system. Maybe a system where we could take AI versions of friends we've made online and receive the guild cards of. I think a lot of hunters that hate on.
Oh, wait. You could recruit an AI version of hunters you're friends with. That is a little more iffy to me. If I'm not misunderstanding that. If it's you can recruit the hunter companions your friends have made, that's cool. If it's a weird clone of your friend, that seems off to me in several ways.
Generally criticize it for similar reasons that I criticized World for. The series does in the future start to get faster paced, aggressive, and kind of absurd with the power of monsters and their abilities. But something you should keep in mind is that Frontier isn't a mainline game, and it's a cool look at what these developers have come up with and think about how they could be implemented into a mainline game. Even with how excessive some of the content gets in the future, looking at Frontier from 2007 to 2009, I can say that they really keep the atmosphere and the feel of the old school core Monster Hunter experience.
Yeah, like so far, there's been very little that he's talked about that has felt not Monster Hunter to me. And considering that this is, one of the side spin-off games where they aren't adherent to being as Monster Hunter-y, there's a lot of what's been in here that I could see being worked into a modern game. All of the new monsters so far, even the one that the Thunder Flying Wyvern that I didn't super like, I could see being adapted into a modern Monster Hunter fairly well. Just tone down the spikes on that one.
These are long videos and require a lot of research. If for some reason there's an error, feel free to comment below and let me know. I always try to add corrections when I can. The next part of this history series will cover the remaining updates within the Seasons era of Monster Hunter Frontier. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Again, it only takes a couple of seconds and helps support me in my goal of creating this content for you all. I try to respond to every comment that I can, so if you want to hear from me, be sure to let me know. Additionally, feel free to join my Discord, which you'll find a link for below in the
Okay. So again, so far, everything I've seen could fit into mainline Monster Hunter with the exception of that one Souls thing, but if you just change the wording from Souls to special monster gems or something like that, it would fit pretty well. I was originally just going to watch the first one of these, but I feel like we can push it into doing the second one. So we're going to check out the second one this series today, too. If it will load properly. There we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode.
Ooh!
In the history of the Monster Hunter Frontier series.
Okay, tornadoes, the weird tornado slashes, but just off the base design, I like that guy.
Today we'll be concluding coverage on Seasons updates from Season 6.0 to 10. There was a lot of positive reception with the last video. If you don't know a lot about Frontier, you may be surprised at how many dedicated Western fans there are for the series.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the know nothing about Frontier category. Also, Monoblos! And Cephalos. Here to learn. Let's see what else we got.
Really happy to see so many veterans to the series, excited to see dedicated coverage of all the major aspects within.
Also, this is going to probably get me hate from older gen Monster Hunters, but I actually like Cephalos. You heard that right. I like Cephalos. Let the hate flow. It empowers me.
This Monster Hunter entry. In the previous video, I mentioned that Frontier is much closer to your traditional Monster Hunter experience than you may think, with the main differences being the extended.
Are those true Gimpray, however you're supposed to pronounce it, or are they white Velociprey? Because that's actually one of the most interesting parts of older Monster Hunter to me. The fact that we had Velociprey and then the rare one-off white Velociprey, and then that actually truly evolved into a new monster, going from a subspecies to a new differentiated species, which is really cool to me.
Grind factor due to being an MMO, as well as how ludicrously powerful both monsters and hunters can become through updates and progression. I think
that is, again, I've said a couple times already, but that is my one of the two gripes everyone has with Frontier. I don't need to keep
within
addressing
Season 1 to 5, the only really excessive design choices we've seen so far were the evolution of Espinas' moveset and abilities. But excessive isn't a negative connotation in this sense.
Super crazy
Rather,
so
excessive
far.
is the name of the game. A deliberate design choice to push traditional Monster Hunter to its limits within a non-mainline entry within the series. Together, we're going to take
let's
a
see
look
where I
at
think
the
it breaks.
development.
Also, Snowy Mountains! One of my favorite maps. I recognize that patch of ground through the gap of a Tigrex's thigh any day, because I have hunted way too many Tigrex.
Of Monster Hunter Frontier from its initial inception to release
I love getting
to
them
the
stuck
updates
there.
and expansions created for it. We'll dive into the features offered in the series and try to compare the gameplay to gameplay of mainline titles. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how intricate and interesting this game's combat was. Think old school Monster Hunter on crack. It's pretty wild, and I'm excited to show it to you. Future videos will focus on the Forward 1 to Forward 5 updates,
another
the
fun
G1
map
to
I used to
G10
love.
updates, and finally the Z/Zenith releases. If you haven't watched my previous videos on the history of the series, I highly suggest you do so now.
This is just the,
if
I'm
you
going to
enjoy
skip
these
over the last
videos,
little bit of the intro.
as you can see by the category, we're going to be getting right into
We already
each
heard all
season
that.
and covering what they brought to Frontier. In my previous video, we discussed the development history pre-Frontier's release, but now that we're in the thick of it, we'll be discussing additions and design choices starting at Season 6
That's
onward.
what I want to know
September
more
16th
about.
marked the release of Season 6.0, which brought with it two new monsters that were hunted together, Nono and Kamu Orogaren. Similar.
Okay, so my cousin apparently looked into the lore of these guys and constantly brings them up to me. And so I hope that they're actually fun, because he wants them to come back. So let's see if they're actually one I would like to come back.
To how players would hunt Teostra and Lunastra together, or Rathian and Rathalos. Nono Orogaren is a wolf-like fanged beast with white fur. Nonos seem to always be female and hang around near Kamu Orogaren, which is a similar male equivalent with black fur. Both are ice elemental monsters,
Rathalos,
but this
Rathian
only
type
seems
thing
to
going
be the
on.
case in an update later on in the series through Monster Hunter G Genuine. Despite not being elder dragons, these monsters have the ability to evade pitfall traps, while similar to pairings like Teostra and Luna.
That's not that crazy. I mean, there's a couple monsters that just aren't affected by shock traps, so a couple monsters that are unaffected by pitfall traps, that makes sense. Plus, I think there was a thing in Tri to where if a large monster wasn't big enough, it wouldn't be affected by pitfalls. But that might... I don't think that's true, actually. I think I might just be misremembering something I misunderstood as a kid.
Teostra or Rathian and Rathalos, Nono and Kamu are unique in that they are designed to never leave each other's sides during the entire duration of the quest. Though there are quests in the future where they are hunted separately. When either of these monsters die, the remaining partner will let out a roar in despair and rage. Sword crystals seem to be added in this update as well. Think oils in Monster Hunter Generations. Essentially, if you had the specific armor skill, you'd be allowed to use sword crystals on your weapons and effectively change the element or ailment of the weapon at the cost of significant sharpness degradation.
That is an interesting mechanic, being able to change your weapon's element at a sharpness cost. And so far, everything I've seen of the wolves, I like them too. Off to a good start.
About 3 times the normal amount. However, this was only basically applied and didn't seem to be fully implemented within 6.0. Rastas previously didn't have the ability to use every weapon type, but this changes in Season 6.0.
Okay, good.
Now Rastas had access to all 11 weapons within the game. Finally, the introduction to Gao weapons seemed to appear within this update.
Gao weapons?
These weapons required armor sets to get the most out of them. By equipping the weapon, each piece of related armor equipped would offer an additional plus 15 attack, plus 2% status, and plus 2% elemental.
That is an interesting mechanic, but again, it's one of those mechanics that I feel like it could either be really cool or really annoying. So again, give me your thoughts on it.
This.moe website points out that this stacks per piece, allowing for a maximum of plus 80 attack, plus 10% status, and plus 10% elemental.
Wow.
These weapons were especially useful for gunners and defined the meta sets for them. The means of
It
getting
makes
some of
sense
this
that'd be a
equipment
meta
was
set
through
from
the
what I heard.
inclusion of Gao Elders, which were previously
Gao
released Elder Dragons from DOS that were a bit easier. Razor Sharp Plus 2 was
Okay.
also introduced. With all of these new features out of the way, let's move on to Season 7.0 and the introduction of a
Also, what armor is this? Because I like almost everything, but the headpiece is making you into a xenomorph. What's up with that?
frontier staple monster, Raviente.
Raviente.
Season 7 was released December 9th, 2009 and had a lot of new features added within. One major feature was the introduction of skill cuffs, which you would attach to your Poogie to bestow armor skill points onto yourself.
Again, why are we bringing Poogie into danger? That does not sit right with me.
Charms in traditional mainline Monster Hunter
pet him
games,
before you
but
go on the
without
hunt.
randomization. You would create the cuffs you wanted and then attach them when necessary. Stamps were also introduced within this update
But that's
and were
basically
used
just
as a means of
talismans.
rewarding players for being consistently subbed to the game. Each week of a player's sub, they would receive a stamp which could be turned in for specific ticket items. Players
Okay,
can just be
MMO
subbed
stuff.
normally to qualify either. They needed both the traditional sub and the extra EX sub to receive rewards. By collecting for a full year, players could use the tickets to purchase yearly equipment pieces, but I'm unsure of their effectiveness. So what's an EX sub? Implemented in earlier
but
updates,
mostly MMO
EX
stuff.
Course was an additional sub tier on top of your traditional HL or Hunter Life subscription model, and offered various bonuses to the player, like certain consumables always being purchasable and some expensive items becoming either free or 50% off. It also offered access to town boxes, which functioned similarly to current mainline games. Players without EX subscription would have to cancel a quest, run back to their house or smith, and get whatever they needed if they forgot items.
Oh, I hated having to do that in Freedom. See, there was a box in the guild, right? There was a box in the guild hub in Freedom Unite, but there wasn't one in the village. So if you started a village quest, you had to cancel the quest and go back and change your stuff if you forgot to do your prep work. But doing your prep work, that's one of the many things that made doing your prep work before you did a hunt so much more rewarding and engaging, though. And that is something I very much miss from older gen Monster Hunters, because nowadays you don't have to prepare for a quest. You don't. You just go on the quest and then, oh, nope, I forgot something. Let me just pop in the tent and grab it. Or, oh, nope, I ran out of potions. Let me pop in the tent and grab it. It used to matter. You used to have to put thought into every single thing you put in your inventory. Because if you didn't, if you had too many potions and potion combining and stuff, you couldn't have as many barrel bombs. You couldn't have, maybe you put 2 books of combos, so you would have a higher chance of getting all your potions or what have you, or combining something in the field, but that meant you could only have 1 trap, or meant you had to cut out the parts to make new traps on the fly if you ran out of traps. You had to strategize the stuff you brought with you so much more, but now you can just pop in a tent and swap stuff around, and I don't like that. It also means that damage from a monster is far less important. You know, when you only had 1 opportunity to stock your stuff, every single point of health you had mattered, whether it was what was actively in your health bar or in your healing items. And if you ran out, you had to take the risk and factor into this. Do I think I can still face this monster without any healing? Have I gotten it weak enough? Do I have enough time to run around the map and gather some herbs and mushrooms and hopefully get a few more pots out of it? Or is it better to exit the quest, get my items refunded, get some of the quest fee refunded? And again, quest fees are another thing that I do want to come back, because again, it made you have to think about this, and I really miss that.
EX placed these boxes within the town itself, making it easier to grab items without needing to abandon a quest. EX placed these boxes within the town itself, making it easier to grab items without needing to abandon a quest. A welcome inclusion that was unfortunately walled off as a paid service.
And that's kind of scummy.
Hairstyles of all things, and locked off specific gathering and material quests. So who is Raviente?
You should not lock quests behind a paywall. No, that's I don't like that.
Well, it's an incredibly large snake-like monster that does not have a typical classification.
Laviente is one that I am interested in seeing come to mainline, because it's the other Dalamadur, from what little I know, and you fight it across an island chain, and it sinks the islands as you go, and that's really cool. Having like the Gogmazios 800 siege on the Laviente would be neat.
Not a snake wyvern, and it's not an elder dragon.
What do you mean it's not an elder dragon? I could have sworn it was.
Despite its enormous size. This monster was actually a server event and required multiple hunting groups of 4 to take it down.
It's a server event, but what is it? It's not a snake wyvern and it's not an elder. Then what is it? What is it classified as? I need to know. Because there's no way it's not an elder dragon.
To what we see with sieges in Monster Hunter World. The monster was seriously enormous and was such a unique inclusion that there was even another EX service that could be unlocked to help deal with hunting with it. Within the caravan area was a cat, and if you were taking part in the event, you could feed the cat specific items to offer boosts to everyone participating against Ravi, such as poisoning or sedating it. The monster had multiple phases, and after the 4th and 7th phase respectively, it would switch locations within the new area you hunted it in. There's many other smaller notes and nuances to this monster, but that will probably be saved for its own dedicated video. The new area is known as Solitude Island and worked as 3 large arenas that Raviente would switch throughout the phase.
What do you mean? You're saying Raviente? It's Laviente, isn't it? There's an L on there.
Phases. The hunters would start within the hunter camp and would move immediately to the main hunting area. Now, the wiki will tell you that hardcore monsters made their appearance in Season 7, which is incorrect. Rather, there were 2 monster variants that weren't actually classified as such, including Blangonga and Diablos. I believe Golden Rathian and Silver Rathalos were included as well. These were SP-specific quests and not actually hardcore. The reason these weren't hardcore is because the true classification first showed up in Season 8. You'll understand why shortly.
Okay. Also, who is this guy? Because he's cool looking. Okay, we're about to find out, I think.
Season 8.0 released April 21st, 2010.
Oh, the swamp. It was the swamp earlier with these two, and I didn't point it out, but I missed the 2 swamp biomes. Again, going back to what I was saying about the day-night cycle changing things. In the day, it's just water puddles, but at night, they turn toxic and poisonous, and if you step into them, you'll get poisoned, which was, again, really cool mechanic, because I think it even affected monsters if they went into it too.
And brought back the sub-updates with 8.5. The main features introduced in 8.0 were a new monster, and with it, a new arena area to fight it within. Diaragua is the new monster edition and an ice element flying wyvern. It is very similar in appearance to Tigrex, but the color scheme and horns help it also resemble a Zinogre. Despite this, it is said that the head resembles that of a fox. Its tail is large and blunt, similar to that of a club, which can smash down at opponents.
Very
Other than
generic
actually. Melee attacks, Diaragua introduced Frostbite, which functions similar to the Ice Blight ailment in mainline games. On top of Frostbite,
is Frostbite just Ice Blight renamed? Is it just Ice Blight renamed? Because why would you not just call it Ice Blight then?
It could also produce sleep after a backflip. Finally, the monster had the ability to stand in place and wait for hunters to attack it. If attacked, it would immediately perform a devastating counter move that would put hunters into an elevated stun state. Instead of the traditional stars over their heads, hunters would actually collapse to their knees for an extended period. Diaragua was hunted.
That's actually really cool. That's actually really cool. And if we should give that, imagine if we gave that to something like Glavios. It's pull the not Glavios, Glavinus. It swing the tail out in front of it, but it holds that position. And if you go to attack it, it does a longsword EI slash on you. Would that not be really cool? Excuse me. Apparently my throat's still a little raw from doing the art showcase yesterday. But that's actually really cool. I like that.
Within a new section of the tower known as the Nest Hole, which was, again, another arena location to hunt specific monsters in.
Okay.
Seemed like a going theme for the past few updates, honestly. It can be noted that in May, the Xbox 360 version of Frontier had its closed beta start after a short delay due to some sort of defect discovered within the game. An interesting note is that the player base apparently had an unexpectedly high amount of male characters being used compared to female characters.
Okay. Not sure why that's particularly notable. I mean, in general, I do just prefer the look of the male armors throughout most of Monster Hunter. And that might just be me preference-wise, but I just think the male armors look better in a lot of the cases. They look more like armor. And a lot of the female armors suffer from bikini armor syndrome. And in the setting as mostly grounded as Monster Hunter, doesn't feel right. And newer Monster Hunter games, that's changed, I'm pretty sure, for the most part. But
June 22nd, 2010 brought the Season 8.5 up.
I don't know. I always play as a male hunter. And like I said, I always hunt solo. Heck, I've even come up with a convoluted fan thing to explain why my hunter's the same hunter throughout all the things I've played.
And a few days later, the full release of the Xbox 360 edition of Frontier. A subspecies of Beru Gyrosu was introduced in 8.5 known as Dora Gyrosu. It offered an even more advanced moveset in comparison to your typical
I like this color scheme for that guy a lot better.
Beru. Despite using Dragon Element instead of Thunder, Doro has the ability to paralyze hunters. It has a more
I think the spikes work in this form a lot better, actually. Hang on. It might have just been a color scheme that made me not like it previously, because the spikes work so much better with it being the white and orange. I like
the anniversary for the series, and multiple events were held to celebrate. A big addition to note is that Season 8.0 was the first to introduce the concept of hardcore monsters, which were originally generally used to rework mainline monsters into more difficult variations with multiple visual differences. To access hardcore monsters, you would need to turn the feature on when posting the quest for the original monster. These monsters weren't just stronger though, their part break thresholds were higher and traps barely worked on them.
So it's kind of like
only around a second. They even
So hardcore monsters are kind of like the tempered or apex version of monsters for Frontier. Okay.
Only took half the normal status ailments and their carves were within the 1% to 5% range. Now to access hardcore monsters,
well, that's unless hardcore monsters have like special parts that are like the hardcore part, having the carve rates be lower feels wrong. If you're giving me a otherwise it's the same but it's just harder version of a monster, you should have higher carve rates, not lower.
You needed to have access to style rank, and its requirement implies that styles were originally introduced in
style rank. What is this? Devil May Cry?
Unlocked at HR 500, later 300, and finally HR 5 with some hunter rank reworks. Players could enter style rank and would be limited to what equipment they could use. They could even enter SR specific quests and set them to hardcore if they preferred. Now the benefit of this style rank was the introduction of weapon styles, which were completely reworked and new movesets for all the weapon types within the game. For example, players would now have access to the Heaven style for each weapon and could change them by equipping a new item known as Secret Notes or Secret Book. These styles changed how the weapons functioned, but differently in comparison to styles from Generations. While a Generation-specific style focused on a given theme that would be applied to all weapons similarly, the styles in Frontier were specific to the weapons equipped. Season 8 brought with it 4 new hardcore.
So I skipped over 4th gen, so I'm not super familiar with what the style system did. But from what I did see of it, it was interesting. And I'm assuming it's something like the Wirebug skills in Rise. I don't know how I feel about that.
monsters.
Don't have enough
Hardcore
context.
Kongolala, which now has pink claws as well as a pink hue on the top of its head cone. It can now hurl multiple large pieces of dung at the player and will bounce around the area multiple times,
I love Kongolala.
unleashing large gas clouds
He's
as
just
it
funny.
does so. The gas is so powerful that it creates
Even if Kongolala is one of those monsters that if I was actually a monster hunter in the world, I would absolutely hate to hunt. As a player, he's fun to hunt.
dragon strength wind. Hardcore Kezu. With brown spots and large blue veins around its body, it basically gets access to its electrical balls during multiple normal attacks it performs and can paralyze hunters with a short but
Man's over here talking about Kezu's balls.
powerful roar. Getting paralyzed can prove fatal considering how aggressive the attacks on this monster tend to be. Hardcore
Yeah.
Lavasia.
I mean, much the same for just regular Kezu, at least in older gen. Higher master rank Kezu, if you got paralyzed, that could be it for you.
Which looks fairly similar to its normal counterpart, but has access to more fireball moves as well as a double body slam maneuver. Hardcore Yan Kutku, which is
Yam Kutku? Did you just say Yam Kutku? Yan Kutku.
Tinker overall and will charge and rampage around the map. Its main new ability
But also, I love Yan Kutku. He's fun. He's one of those monsters that I don't think about until I'm prompted to think of him. But when I do think of him, it's very fond. Same with Hypnocatrice, but even more so. Because I'll at least sometimes remember Yan Kutku on my own, but I like him.
is a fireball that will create a wall of fire.
I'm glad he's in Wilds. Used to hunt him a lot, actually.
Oh wow, we actually got a new full area in the Season 9.0
Oh?
update, which released September 29th, 2010. The new area was known as Highland and consists mostly of plateaus around rocky cliffsides. However,
I like
the area
this.
is incredibly high up, and looking over the edge of the plateaus shows a sea of clouds. There are a few other locations
That sounds like a really beautiful locale. I like that.
of note within the area, with a small forest at the
Oh,
summit
that's really
of the area
nice.
and some caves that contain multiple stone pillars. It's a really beautiful spot and is covered in various waterfalls throughout. Highland is home
Different
to two
deer
new
monster.
herbivore species introduced in Frontier, known as Europe and Baruku. Europe, or Europe, I'm not completely sure, are deer or antelope-like species similar to Kelby, and Baruku are similar to buffalo.
Oh. Let me see
Or
those guys
Europe,
again. Hang
I'm
on.
not
Let me
completely sure,
try and
are
pause it at the
deer
right
or
frame.
antelope-like species similar to Kelby, and Baruku
Those guys are adorable. Oh, these are adorable. Okay, I hope these guys come back because they are adorable.
are similar to buffalo. Gurenze Buru is a new flying wyvern introduced in
I don't know how I
Season
feel about
9
your
of Monster
design.
Hunter Frontier and
Ooh, you're a very conflicting design on me. Because you look... this monster design. I genuinely can't tell if I really like it or really hate it. Or maybe both at the same time. I don't... Like, this fits for Monster Hunter. It's not that. I just... Wait. This is making me... question... Like... This is a weird design to me. I don't know how I feel about it. Because, like, every time I see, literally every frame my brain interpolates of this, it's either I like it or I hate it. No in between, and that's doing some weird things in my mind. I don't know why that's my reaction to it.
has a sharp horned head similar to Zamtrios when it's in its ice armor form. It uses said horn as its primary means of attacking prey and hunters, often charging at them. It has a water element which it uses to its advantage through attacks like water beams and balls, similar to Plesioth. It even has the iconic hip check maneuver. It has a paralysis gas it can release and can also shoot spikes into the ground from its tail, which act as electrical landmines, but only when it
Okay, why does it have so many elements and statuses? I mean, Gravios has a bunch, and Serious have a bunch, but It feels like you're giving him just a little too much stuff.
Is storming, which is fairly common within the Highlands. They're actually fairly peaceful, but will become rather aggressive once attacked or if the weather is storming. Season 9 also had its own set of hardcore monsters and would be the first season to offer Frontier-specific monsters with hardcore status. Hardcore Bessarios, which has a branch in one of its rocks on its back, as well as bright blue eyes and purple spots on its stomach. Not only can it fire 3 heat beams in succession, but now can roll and emit poison at the same time, as well as dig underground before resurfacing to shoot a powerful fireball. Hardcore Daimyo Hermitar, which looks similar to the normal monster but with new attacks.
Okay, so we say Hermitar the same. So there's that at least.
Such as having a water beam of extended length, as well as running back and forth while swinging its claws around. The Espinus subspecies also received a hardcore version, where the spikes around its body are now longer down its back and has more spikes overall on its wings. This hardcore species actually...
Here we're getting into the Frontier obsession with spikes. I don't like this.
Showed up before hardcore Espinus, which arrives in season
also
10.
Espinus, why?
A large fireball that it will shoot into the sky before multiple other fireballs begin to rain down. Hardcore Hypnocatrice is more pink than orange and can produce stronger winds than
more flamingo-y Hypnocatrice I like.
Your typical version. Hardcore Paria Puria has a darker, more saturated color scheme and has a vortex attack that can pull in hunters. It can perform multiple new moves after sucking a hunter in, like spitting vomit on them or swinging its head back and forth in a wider range. Why would you...
Kind of like that.
Why would you make a hardcore Plesioth? It's cursed. Visually, it's very similar to your typical Plesioth, but
let me guess. It can hip check you from an entirely separate map.
With a darker tint and more muscle mass. It has a bunch of new aggressive moves, but the craziest thing is that it can U-turn mid-air when jumping.
What?
Hardcore Teostra is next and the first hardcore Elder Dragon, with an even longer flamethrower attack than the updated Teostra for Frontier. He can also cover various areas of the map in explosive powder and make them explode at will.
Okay, but it's an Elder Dragon, that's fine.
The major feature is that he can cover himself in a fire tornado while roaring, entering rage mode,
again,
or
Elder
activating
Dragon,
its
that's
fire
fine.
aura. Hardcore Tigrex comes equipped with larger horns, but is missing one of its eyes. It has many new moves, but most notably,
it's missing its... Okay, so hardcore monsters are just tempered monsters. Okay. But I can't tell if Tigrex with the longer horns goes really hard or is insanely goofy or both. I think it's both.
Its roar is stronger and has increased range.
I'm Batman.
And it has the ability to do a double 360-degree spin attack.
Oh, that's me. Doing the 360 twice is gonna catch so many people who don't know that. What season 10 got?
One of the biggest additions to Season 10, which released January 26, 2011, was weapons gaining additional moves and functionality. Some of these animations were actually reused for Monster Hunter Tri.
I knew it! I knew that was a Tri longsword. That was the Tri Spirit combo. I knew it. It felt familiar the second you said it. Longsword is one of the two things I mained in Tri, and I've said this in comments and in other videos before, but I've been playing Tri since literally before I could read. It is etched into my soul. I knew that felt Tri.
The Moat Arena for Monster Hunter Freedom Unite was also brought over in this inclusion. Due to the amount of effort and design that went into each weapon receiving new moves, there was no additional flagship monster included with this update. However, there were plenty of hardcore monsters introduced, which we will go over now. First, we have hardcore Azure Rathalos, whose spikes have been developed further than your typical monster and has the ability to spit out 7 fireballs in a row. Next is hardcore Chameleos, and the second...
I've said it before, I want Chameleos to come back. I mean, I guess he did in Rise, but I love Chameleos. He's so funny.
Elder Dragon to have a hardcore variation. It has a sweet combo maneuver where it launches the hunter towards it and spits poison at them while they're in midair. Hardcore Diaragua has more vibrant color and more saturated horns and claws.
I think he looks better like
all
that.
The same moves, but doubled or tripled in use, and they're even faster than before. The original Espinus finally received a...
Stop saying Espinus. It's Espinos. Every time, immediately, I get, ugh, it feels wrong.
Hardcore variation as well. It's faster and stronger than your typical Espinas and has more pronounced bodily features. Hardcore Gypsyros has a larger tail and poison stains around its face. On top of being
I never hated Gypsyros. I know a lot of people didn't like Gypsyros, but I really liked him. Especially because he was always goofy in a fun way to me, and I really like his fake out death because it was really effective in the older games when you didn't know about it, and then once you did learn about it, it would actually give you a window to get a little extra Gypsyros parts because you can carve him when he's doing his fake death thing. You just got to be quick about it and only do like 1 or 2 and then get out of there before you get hit with his flail attack.
able to pretend it's
Also, why does Bulldrome have that much of a mohawk?
Around its face.
Why do you have that much of a mohawk, Bulldrome? Are you in your rebellious teenage phase?
On top of being able to pretend it's dead, it can now also fake paralysis and fake sleep depending on which status ailments hunters are using.
Oh, that is fun. It can fake being paralyzed and sleeped. I really like that. They should have given that to Wild's Gypsyros. If we get purple Gypsyros in Master Rank, do that, Capcom. Do that.
At the time. Hardcore Kieran is surrounded by electricity at all times and has a large range of new electrical attacks that are even more accurate than before.
He can straight up teleport,
One of its charge attacks is so fast it almost looks like it teleports. Hardcore Monoblos is a little more unique in design with longer horns and red marks on the top of its head and horn.
He looks good though.
It has a ground slam maneuver and it can immediately charge out of it for a horn attack. For some reason, they thought it was a good idea to introduce a hardcore variation of Rajang. It has multiple
Rajang. There's no, you don't stop at the J. It's a softer Rajang, not J. Different pronunciations. But also, who thought, like he said, who thought giving Rajang hardcore was a good idea?
New moves, such as being able to spin around and leap across the entire area, and homing punches that will create electricity on impact. Hardcore Shogun Shianatar is a little more tame than Rajang and can spray poison from the front and spit some from the back of its Gravios shell. It can...
I mean, it does live in the Toxic Swamps area, and I can see Ceanataur getting poisoned, but that feels more like it should be a subspecies thing, not, Frontier's equivalent of tempered thing.
Cause quakes while attacking, which prevent the hunter from escaping. Hardcore Velocidrome has multiple small visual differences, such as its new crest shape at the top of its head and its red eyes. It can also cause quakes like the Shianatar.
Oh, no. You can't give Velocidrome quakes. I've fought Velocidrome that were shorter than my hunter. Velocidrome is not big enough to cause quakes. What are you talking about? If anything, give him like a super fast charge slash or something. Not quakes.
And has multiple new tackle-like moves. And finally, Hardcore Yan Garuga.
Oh, this is going to be horrifying.
Poison-stained beak and new moves like performing a tail whip while also releasing a poison mist around it. It can also scream.
I'll give it poison mist. I mean, Yan Garu is a pretty poison monster. I guess as a version of it could learn to mist its poison, but that's bordering on the edge of, but how?
During some of these moves. Another thing to note about Season 10 is that it introduced Storm style, so players now had access to Heaven, Storm, and Earth. For clarification, Earth style is your basic run-of-the-mill set. On February 2nd, 2011, the Naked Hunter knife incident occurred, in which individuals who participated in the Raviente event were forced to HR 999, equipped with a Naked Hunter knife, and seemed to lose access to all of their equipment and items.
What? Let me hear that again. What?
Season 10 is that it introduced Storm style. Earth style is your basic knife incident occurred, in which individuals who participated in the Raviente event were forced to HR 999, equipped with a naked hunter knife, and seemed to lose access to all of their equipment and items.
What? So you fight Laviente, and then you're immediately brought to the maximum possible hunter rank, stripped naked, given nothing but a butter knife, and lose access to all your stuff? What? I mean, it's clearly, very clearly some kind of bug glitch, but what? Oh, I'm almost sad I wasn't there for that, because that is hilarious.
Systems were left like this for weeks, apparently, and
Weeks?
players were eventually rolled back after emergency maintenance.
What? Oh, that's... Oh. Oh.
We've now officially covered all of the season's era of Monster Hunter Frontier. I think that the inclusion of the hardcore monsters is where we really start to see the excessive design aspects of monsters start to come to light, but this still isn't much different from what we would see in Deviants within Generations.
Exactly. So far, pretty much everything has been within the bounds of it's the upper end of what monsters are capable of. So far, we're still everything I could see fitting into current Monster Hunter with not too much reworks.
The flagships that get introduced don't come off as excessively designed to me. Rather, they again offer some features I'd like to see more of in future games.
A little
such as
bit excessively designed,
moves,
but nothing
or
crazy.
monsters having the ability to counter. The gimmick with Nana and Kamu would also...
Yes! The monsters being able to counter is a really cool idea. Again, Glavenus would be really cool having a counter longsword or EI slash thing. Ido slash whatever it's supposed to be called. That would be really cool for What other monsters would be good with a counter move? Let me think. I could see Nargacuga maybe having a nothing personal shooks around behind you and gets you counter move, maybe. Who else? What other monster befits a counter? Brachydios. Brachydios could take like almost like a guard boxing stance, juke to the side of your attack, and punch you real hard. That'd be cool. What let me know in the comments what other monsters you think should have a counter mechanic, how that would work, because that does seem like it'd be really cool.
Also be a fantastic inclusion for a new species within the mainline series. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you shouldn't vilify the series too much for the wrong reasons. A lot of the features we see in Frontier mirror a lot of the issues I had with Monster Hunter World, but their inclusion in this game seems more developed and acceptable for a non-mainline MMO. It's creative and cool and sticks to the old school style and controls we expect from older generation Monster Hunter games. It seems to manage to hold the atmosphere and aesthetic some of us miss within the series.
Yes, I do very much miss the feel and look of old Monster Hunter.
They're long videos and require a lot of research. If for some reason there's an error, feel free to comment below and let me know. I always try to add corrections when I can.
Alright, let me give this a like. I really enjoyed this. Again, so far, everything I've seen, apparently didn't hide that again. Whoops. So far, everything I have seen, I could honestly see getting adapted into mainline Monster Hunter with just, the one or two exceptions talked about. So far, Frontier actually looks really cool, at least for the earlier stuff. And there's a lot of what was said here that I think would be really cool to see in modern Monster Hunter. Especially that counter mechanic. Giving monsters a counter to some of your, they pause and hold a stance, and if you attack them while they're doing that, they'll do a counter move on you. That is really cool, and I actually really want to see some new monsters have that. Because I think that would be Again, it'd be really cool to see that. And I want your thoughts on what other monsters you would work on and how that move would work. But I am gonna call it here for the moment. We'll be going through and checking out some other of these videos later on. But I think going through the seasons era is a good stopping point for this for today. So, if you have any other thoughts on cool things about Frontier that this series may not point out, or just thoughts on what we were talking about so far, please tell me. Again, tell me what monsters would have a counter move in your head, because that would be really cool. Tell me if you want to see any of these Frontier monsters that we've seen so far come back into mainline or in a Wilds expansion or what have you. And I will see you next time. Also, yeah, one last time, if you have any issues with me doing a react, just let me know. I'll take them down. Not trying to cause any drama. Bye. What are you still doing here? The video's over. There might be some for you up there or some for you over there, but there's nothing left here, so hit the YouTube buttons and move on.